It makes no sense whatsoever to think that a currency is money for the only reason that a government issues it. Ultimately, a state-issued currency is nothing but credit. And what it is basically using is a unit of measure and as a way of transferring its fiscal imbalances throughout the entire economy, and it does it via inflation, which is the destruction of the purchasing power of the currency. Certainly, it cannot issue all the debt that it wants in its own currency because the demand for the currency is not unlimited. This is why, for example, so many governments need to issue debt in foreign currency.
So are foreign currencies or world reserve currencies more sound?
When they say that governments don't have a monetary constraint if they have a world reserve currency or if they are monetarily independent, that is a stupidity. Like all political constructs, when you pass all the limits of confidence, the entire thing crumbles.
So if government currency is not money, what is money?
Menger described money's origins as basically evolving out of market exchange. A commodity that's highly valued suddenly becomes acquired not for consumption, but rather in anticipation that it would be used later to trade for something else.
Where does the value initially come from?
What Mises says is that the exchange ratios that are associated with the commodity that comes with money can be traced back or regressed back in time when it was originally a commodity.
So, like gold and silver?
The reason why JP Morgan said that gold is money and everything else is credit is because, to a certain extent, he was completely right, because supply is limited and everybody in the world views gold as something that is a unit of measure and a mean of payment, and certainly as a reserve of value.
So if gold and silver were used as money, how did government-issued currency come about?
If gold and silver are just money, well, why not just grab the gold and silver mines? And in fact, governments would do that. Ancient kings would normally grab the gold and silver mines. In theory, you have all the gold and silver you want, you got all the money. Why would you then take the stuff, stamp your picture on it, give it to people and say, okay, everybody in the kingdom has to give me one of these back again? Think about it, it's kind of odd. But it makes perfect sense if you're trying to feed an army. You know, here you have this army of 100,000 people. They're sitting town on the border. Well, how are you going to get food to them? Under ancient conditions, unless they're next to the ocean, where it's relatively easy to move stuff around, it's extremely difficult to move around large amounts of grain. They're going to eat everything within walking distance in a matter of weeks. So what are you going to do? Either you have to employ, another 100,000 people just bringing them stuff, or you can give them all tiny little pieces of metal with your picture on it and say, okay, everybody in the kingdom has to give me one back. Voila, you've just employed your entire population, getting soldiers things they want.
So governments did not invent money, they co-opted it. Then faced with constrained money supply, governments embraced fiat currencies, first by debasing the money and then by removing all linkages. For example, in Rome, the standard silver coin was called the denarius. When first released at the dawn of that empire, it had a silver value of 94%. Centuries later, when Rome was fading away, its silver value was just 0.02%. Another example is the Federal Reserve Note. When released, it was redeemable in gold, but that link was removed as it had restrained government spending too much. The result? The creation of more and more Federal Reserve notes and a massive loss of purchasing power. So where do we go from here? What alternatives exist?
Independent currencies are closer to what money really is if they preserve the three principles of being a reserve of value, a generalized means of payment, and a unit of measure. And independent currencies, independent money, is always going to have the benefit of not suffering from a government that will always have the incentive to transfer to the rest of the citizens its fiscal imbalances by destroying the purchasing power of the currency.
Might we look to decentralized cryptocurrencies?
Money has been nationalized for 100 years, and then seemingly out of nowhere in early 2009, we saw the emergence of a kind of revolutionary tactic from below to give us a better money. You have the use value of the blockchain leading to the monetary value of the currency unit itself. This is a technology that's not going anywhere. It's just going to be continued to be played with and improved upon. and it's something that all economic actors everywhere in the world have to deal with. The great calling of our times today is for private actors in the private space where there's real innovation to use the new tools we have, among which are distributed networks, to create better versions of all the things the state has attempted to monopolize, and thereby build out a new freedom that comes from creativity, innovation, and market action.
G'day, g'day. Welcome to Incubator Weekly. Hi, Ryan. Hi, AJ. How are you?
Hello.
Morning, everyone. I'm coming at you live, as AJ would always say on his streams, from Pioneer Day. Actually,
right,
all three of us are coming at you live from Pioneer Day.
That's true.
In the state of Utah, in the United States of America, we have what's called Pioneer Day, and it celebrates the Mormon trek into the territory of Utah. And these people had to like walk across the vast plains of the American, the middle part of America, and settle down in this valley that was basically completely dry, completely uninhabitable. But they made a huge city. It's now a huge city of like, I think probably 2 million at least people in Salt Lake City and down across the Wasatch Front. And I'm in the Wasatch back, like the mountain valleys on the backside. And I just wanted to mention that because I view Dash as another set of pioneers where we're basically like, we have to go through extremely hard times crossing the plains of a new territory and completely found a new financial system. And I think that we'll find that we'll look back in, it was what guys, help me out, probably almost 200 years ago or something like that, is 1847, that Utah was just like refounded again by the pioneers. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't take us that long. Maybe cut that in half, or cut that by 10, and maybe say 20 years from now, we'll look back and we'll have millions and millions of people using the Dash cryptocurrency.
I can sign up for that. How about you, AJ?
We'll see.
Oh, well, it depends on us, right? We'll see.
AJ, would you?
The best way to predict the future is to create it, right?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I am trying to build things to, help make stuff happen.
Exactly.
Well, that's what it seems. And that's what brings us here today, which is to discuss a whopping 4 dips that you have submitted to the Dash core repository within, I believe, the past month, AJ. And so without any further ado, shall we jump into those?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first one, I will go ahead and get pulled up here. It is called define tracking. Let me go ahead and get this going here.
Yeah. HD mixing to define mix tracking. So I don't know.
So what is that? Firstly, like from a high level, like what is that?
Okay, so there's only one wallet that I'm aware of that supports CoinJoin, and you've heard my criticisms of CoinJoin, but also, it's better than nothing for certain use cases. And the way that it works in the Dash wallet presently is, and this is actually really scary. So a lot of people don't know this, but if you just use Dash Core without any tweaks to the configuration, it makes a lossy wallet. It generates all keys independently. It's not an HD wallet by default. And every time it needs to generate, it basically pre-generates a cache of 1,000 keys. And then when CoinJoin's turned on, it uses those keys. And if you've used CoinJoin, you've likely encountered where it pops up and says, needs to generate another 1,000 coins. And at the code layer, so this is bad for a few different reasons. One is if you're actually trying to use the money, say you wanted to share a CoinJoin wallet with your mobile wallet, it'll actually, well, I don't know if it still does, but as of 6 months ago or so, if you tried to do that, it would crash the mobile wallet, because the mobile wallet was built to only handle a couple hundred transactions, and CoinJoin will make thousands.
You tried to put the same seed into your mobile wallet as came from your Dash Core wallet, that would cause a crash on the mobile side?
If you're using CoinJoin, yes. Because the mobile wallet can only handle a couple hundred transactions, and CoinJoin will generate thousands of transactions. And then it'll also be confusing because it looks like a spend to the mobile wallet, because the mobile wallet doesn't have the software logic in order to interpret it. So what this does is says, okay, look, first, we need to be using HD wallets by default. That's, well, that doesn't say that, but that's a given. We need to be using HD wallets by default. HD wallets have a path. So you'll notice that there it says M4450, and those all have apostrophes next to them, and then 00. And then the next one is at the end 10. And then there would be 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way on to 16-0, and then potentially past that. So CoinJoin, the maximum number of mixes is 16. So we have this place in an HD path that designates what type of HD path it is, what coin it is, what account or contact that it's for, and then what the usage of it is. And usage traditionally has either been you're using it as a receiving address or you're using it as a change address. Well, CoinJoin fits really nicely into this because the receiving or the change address could be mixed one time, and then the one meaning change is the way that it's presently used. But we can just add a 2, and that means that it's mixed 2 times. So on to 16, that's mean that it's mixed 16 times. So this way, we can define in software how to track that the coin's been mixed. Something like the mobile wallet would know, oh, I don't need to, well, there's also other ways this could be done too, but I don't need to show all of these things as transactions, and from 1 to 16 for a CoinJoin enabled wallet. I'll just know that those are mixing processes, and I don't need to show them all. And so this is just a really simple way to kind of take the thinking out of, like, how would we get this to work? It's not a complex problem. We already have a method that we use for wallets. We already have a place that has been used for something similar within the HD path, that string of that starts with M and has those numbers in it. So this is just defining, hey, this is the way that it can work, so that we could have that unambiguously be the way that we determine that something's fixed. There's another problem though. So the wallet, the Dash Core wallet, does not actually track back. It does not actually keep track of how many times a coin's been mixed. What it does is it looks at the previous coin and checks the value of it, and then looks at the previous coin and checks the value of it, and looks at the previous coin and checks the value of it, all the way back to the denomination event. And that's how it determines whether something's been mixed. So it doesn't actually know whether, there is no signal as to whether or not something is mixed. And this is why that when CoinJoin spins it, it unmixes it, which is ridiculous, right?
Are you talking about, just let me back up for a minute. What you're saying is, my understanding of, like, I haven't really looked into how CoinJoin is tracking how many rounds, but I would have assumed that it's some kind of state variable within the wallet software of
that's what I would have assumed, but it isn't.
Okay. And I don't think we need to get into the details of what it actually is, but what you're suggesting is, let's keep that state right within the path, the HD path, so that the state can not only be in a wallet, but it can be in the HD path itself, so you could share it across devices. Is that what you're saying?
Not so. I don't want to say so that you can share it across devices, because the use case of this is beyond that statement alone. A side effect of this is that you could make it easier to share across devices. But if there's no changes to the wallet software, this wouldn't make much of a difference. It could. If we took the existing wallet as it works now, and we took this strategy, then it would only see non-CoinJoin coins, and it wouldn't see CoinJoin transactions.
Now, are you also saying what would be required for Dash to accept this this dip? Is this a wallet-based dip? Is this like a best practices standard that you're suggesting, or does this require any kind of protocol changes?
Well, that's a matter of interpretation. I would say there needs to be a protocol change in that, well, not a protocol change on the blockchain, no. But Dash Core should be maintaining state of when something is mixed, because as it stands, it will unmix coins to denote that they've been fully mixed, which is kind of absurd. So once your coins are fully mixed and you send them to someone else, it unmixes them. It combines them all back together in the send. And so there's some, and that's this whole string of dips addresses in various aspects, either these user experience issues or these security flaw issues.
Okay, and I wanted to get this on air because there was some confusion in the Discord a little bit ago about what you meant with security issues, and I made it clear in Discord that when you say security issues, you're really talking about what a lot of other people in the Dash community would think of as privacy concerns or privacy improvements. And so when you're saying let's fix the security issues, you're saying let's improve the privacy just by different terms. And I agree that those two are essentially synonymous in the sense that, you know, if your blockchain or your currency in general is leaking information about that can be potentially personally identifying, then that is a security concern. And that's exactly what we should call it. And that's even a less controversial way to talk about it, because fixing security issues is definitely, everybody would agree that you should always fix security issues.
Yeah.
So to be clear, this particular dip is not in and of itself a sort of workaround or hack, if I dare say, to get the core wallet's mixing function to translate directly into mobile, but rather this is part of something that maybe would make more sense in context as we look at other dips.
So this is just a strategy to solve the existing problem with how to track the CoinJoin in a way that is going to be easy. If we implemented it today in Dash Core, then Dash Mobile would work better. But Dash Mobile doesn't have any support for CoinJoin, which is silly, because I think because people have stuck in their heads like, oh, the only way to implement CoinJoin on mobile is to have everything about it implemented on mobile, and this won't work because of the way that it has to use background process, like all this technical garbage, right? Which is true in a sense. You're not going to have the luxury of finding a way to make that app stay open or to force its background processes to take priority over a period of days in order for CoinJoin to work. That's not technically feasible. But you don't have to do the mixing on the device that spends the money. So if all we did was make a minor update to the mobile wallet and make a minor update to Dash Core, because Dash Core does have the ability to use HD wallets, it just doesn't do it by default. And the mobile wallet uses HD wallets by default, but it doesn't have any ability to understand CoinJoin. So if this would be something that bridges that gap. But also, yes, in the broader way of things, as I've worked in the various Dash tools between mobile, Dash Direct, Dash Core, some of the developer tooling, over the course couple of years, these are the things that, like, Ryan and I have had conversations about all these things. I've had conversations with other developers about all these things. And this is just formalizing it to say, hey, after Not just, okay, initially I said, well, this is an obvious way to do it. Why not do it this way? This is actually, okay, I've implemented code that does some of these things this way, not particularly the CoinJoin, but among the dips. So I know that it actually works. I've seen other standards. I've got more exposure. So now, rather than just being like, a pesky brat, know-it-all, I'm a pesky brat know-it-all that has the experience to back it too.
A pesky brat do-it-all is what you should.
Yes.
Hey, so let's say the worst case scenario, everybody ignores this except for our little team here in the incubator. This basically will then, we can use this as a blueprint and say, hey, whatever DCG does with their core product and core wallet and with their mobile wallets, fine, take it or leave it. But we're going to use this so that we can build a mobile wallet that does mixing.
Yeah, and so in the wallet that we're working on, Dashcore has DIP 14 and DIP 9, and DIP 9 is not really a specification as much as it is a specification for specifications. And then DIP 14 is actually a specification for HD wallets. They don't address this, and if Evo comes out at some point, we can be backwards compatible with that. But this is a simpler alternative solution to basically to DIP 14 as well. Well, not this in of itself, but one of the other ones. So okay. Yeah, we can use it in ours, and then that doesn't preclude us from being able to use theirs if there's ever live code for that.
Great. Okay. So should we look at this then in the context of the other ones that we're looking at today?
Let us have a little view here. Okay, so next we are going to DIP 134. Which,
well, PR 134, they don't get assigned numbers until they are approved.
Excuse me, PR 134.
Yeah.
Okay. So please.
Canonical, deterministic, wallet, and XPUB IDs. So when you are sharing contacts in particular, there's two pieces to a contact. It's like you can follow someone and they can follow you. You can share ability to pay to someone and they can share ability to pay to you. In the case of a business, typically it's just one way. It could be two-way because you could occasionally have refunds or something like that they need to send you money back. But typically in the case of a business, it's one way. They're going to share an XPUB with you, which is, an unlimited, a set of up to 2 billion addresses, an XPUB that corresponds to up to 2 billion addresses, so essentially unlimited. And you, every time you go to pay them, you're going to use preferably multiple addresses, because preferably you wouldn't be unmixing your coins. You would just be sending your coins with whatever's needed to pay them. But in the worst case scenario, you're going to be using one address per payment. And that...
Let me know if you want me to show the preview also.
Oh, no, you don't have to worry about the preview. I think the stuff that's in here is probably better than that. That's a bit longer. So, and then you also have your wallet phrase, also known as your recovery phrase. But recovery...
Seed phrase.
Yeah, seed phrase is a technical term. I am not really aware of anybody that uses it that way, but yeah, it's also called that. Ryan and I have had, and Joe, we all been debating about what to call this phrase thing, because all the UIs on the phones call it recovery. Never mind. Anyway, but this is important in that you may want access to more than one wallet on your phone, and you definitely need access to more than one contact. And so you need some way to be able to reference these in the code. You need an ID. And so this provides a super, super simple, secure method of generating an ID that's short enough that it will neatly fit into a database, is easy to index.
Like this one here?
Yeah.
Okay. And let me also just back up a little bit, just in case people are wondering while you're talking. Is this in any way related to Dashpay, Evo contacts that we've been working on for 7 years? How is this related? And is it compatible? Is it different? Is it an alternative? How would you?
It's an alternative, because I've looked at, I don't remember which dip that was. I think that was dip 14, and they've got a way of doing it that kind of makes sense, but it kind of bends the rules of the existing software in a way that you can't just use existing software. You'd actually have to make changes to existing HDPath software.
Mhm.
And I haven't gone deep enough to fully understand why they've taken the route they've taken exactly the way that they have, but they have a different way of doing this. This one is a way that works with the way that everything already works. So the way that HD wallets already work, the way that the standard has already been defined, it's actually in the use case of BIP32, I think it is. It's hard to remember numbers. I've never been good at that. I always failed those exams in class when they're like, which constitutional amendment? I'm like, what does a number have to do with it? What the thing does? Why don't we call it by its name? But
yeah, BIP 32 is like the meta is the description of HD paths in general, and I think BIP 44 is a very specific type of that. General.
Yeah, so I believe that it was BIP 32 that describes HD paths that actually lays out how to use an account for relationships. And it talks about it in the case of businesses and departments and businesses that do business with each other. But you can easily say, oh, yeah, well, a business that does business with other businesses is the same as a person that does transactions with other people. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the use case given in BIP 32 in the context of BIP 44, then you can say, oh, yeah, well, we just use the account as the contact as described in the BIP 32 use case, and we can then we can use things that way. Now, what this does is it just says we're going to take a wallet phrase, we're going to do the normal existing process, and we already have the code for this for the browser in terms of what we've done with the Dash Incubator dependency. So Dash phrase, Dash HD, Dash keys. So we're going to take the wallet phrase, we're going to turn it into a seed. We're going to take the seed, we're going to turn it into an HD key, the root HD key, the root wallet. And then we're going to run a secure hash on that, truncate the first few bytes. Now, in BIP 32, they do actually give a way for getting the ID of the wallet. But essentially in the BIP, it says this isn't secure and results in conflicts, don't use it. And it also uses a hash algorithm, which is now known to be insecure. And so this just does it a little bit differently. So that it will, it's actually at _ on GitHub. Okay. If you want to connect with me, the best way is actually at CoolAge86 on Twitter if you want my hot takes, or at _ beyond code if you want my tame and my alter ego that's the better ego. Anyway, so this does that conversion to the root wallet and then uses more of the information, because in BIP 32 it only says to use the public key, but that I don't feel like that's actually descriptive enough considering what is contained in a wallet. But it's a really simple everyday basic operation. Any programmer could do this. If they couldn't do this, they're not worth their salt. Every programmer should be familiar with how to take bytes, pass it into a function, a hash function, and then truncate the bytes that you get out of it, and then run a base 64 conversion. That's all this is. It's like a 3-step process. Now, the process of getting from the seed from the phrase to the seed to the HD key, that's not something every programmer is going to do, but we have the tools for that. So there's, those tools already exist. And then actually this now exists in Dash HD as well. And then the same process applies if you're given an XPUB. It's the same process, except that you're not deriving the XPUB. You're just taking the HD key that represents the XPUB. You're going from XPUB to HD key, and then you're running that same process where you're taking the byte string of that HD key, hashing it, taking the first. I think it was 64.
So in synopsis, could we say that this is like an alternate implementation of what could be considered usernames?
No. This is
what is the simplest way to describe this?
Is for internal stuff. A user would never see this.
The user would never see this. Okay.
Yes. The reason that we need this is because if you are going to be syncing and sharing things between devices, or if you need to back up your contacts, there's been some criticism about, do I really want to publish all of my information to a third party rather than keeping it with me and my devices? So this is, if you are going to develop some strategy, we need the strategies to be compatible. And the ID is something that BIP32 makes very clear, hey, don't actually use this. This is just an example. And then we don't have something else for creating those IDs. And this is something that's simple, that's kind of common practice, just applied to this specific use case. It's technical, it's implementation details, it's for caching and syncing.
Got it. What other dips are we covering today?
We've got 2 more.
Okay, let's move it.
All right, offline first. Contact payment subscription exchange. So that's a good one to go over. This is super simple. This one you should click on the preview.
Okay.
I'd say super simple. It's easy to explain. The implementation details are actually not as easy, but if see it, for example, right there. So scroll that up a little bit so we can take a look at it. No, up the other way.
The other up?
Yeah, that one. Push the page up. There we go. Yeah, so we can see that example, that big string of dash, colon, blah, 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 blah. So this is what the QR code looks like when you decode it presently. So when you have a QR code, it starts with dash, colon, and then an address, and then some parameters. And that string is just encoded into a QR code. So QR code is the same as text. It's just representing it in a way that before, nowadays on the phone, in the last year, all the phones now have, like you can take live video and copy text out of it, right? But that didn't exist until this past year. And so we used QR codes to put text in a format where it was easier for the computer to read it in a way that's unambiguous. So if you're familiar with scanning the QR code, that's what it looks like. It looks like this. And so what we're saying here is, hey, we need to be able to put an XPUB in the QR code rather than a single address, because that is essentially what a contact is. It is an XPUB represents a possible 2 billion addresses. And so that's good enough for a contact. And an XPUB could represent a contact holistically. Right now, the way that things are currently used, an XPUB represents a particular device of a contact. So you would actually have multiple XPUBs for a contact, depending on whether you're going to pay them to their phone, or you're going to pay them to their desktop, or you're going to pay them to their work phone versus their home phone, or whatever, right? And this is why we need IDs for XPUBs, so that we can differentiate multiple XPUBs with a contact and multiple wallets where you might have more than one wallet phrase you want to check for money or whatever. Anyway, so it's just a URL, and this defines a couple of things. You can see the prior art section there. If you push up, there's a whole bunch of these, because both in the private sector as well as in the big B space, there's been a lot of work in defining these, and good work. And, I'm highly critical of things in general. Not all of this is great, but a lot of it is good and some of it's great. And so these specifications are specifications that already exist. Some of them we kind of follow, some of them we kind of don't. Some of them are generally followed, some of them generally aren't. But this is just taking a bunch of standards and saying, okay, we should be able to represent the URL in HTTPS form as well as Dash form. Because if somebody doesn't have the Dash app, we should actually have a way that they can receive money without having the Dash app. They should just be able to use the QR scanner on their phone and be able to receive money, right? Or receive a contact through a web page. And then that could incentivize them to go get the app, or that could redirect them to the app. So there needs to be a way that if they don't have the Dash app, and this is what I would prefer, is that we kind of ditch the dash colon and just go with using HTTPS URLs that then could redirect to the Dash app as needed. But regardless, we need both ways. And then we need to be able to define, okay, this is the XPUB, and then there's a standard called OIDC that defines basically contact information. So things like nickname, profile picture, additional data that you generally would exchange with a contact in the way that you would usually exchange it. And the standard isn't 100% for our use case, but it's close enough that, yeah, there's one or two things that we need to tweak from it, and that's defined in here. But with those tweaks, we use a standard way to share contacts that already exists, that's already well known, that other software already pretty much understands. And we add a couple tweaks so that XPUBs are not part of any contact standard, right? Because that's purely in the blockchain space. But we add the XPUB to it, and then we add also the denominations, which is another thing that's related to XPUB send. I actually created the XPUB send dip so that I could go back and finish this dip and then reference it when I'm talking about denominations. But that's all this is. It's just, here's how we define a URL that has contact information in it that you could scan it. And then, of course, what you'd want is that the software, if you scan someone and they click OK, then they should immediately be given the QR that you can scan back. And so then you mutually share the contact information if that's the way that it goes. So, if you think about all the contexts in which you want to share a contact with someone, you already have a medium of exchange. You're already texting them, or you're emailing them, or you're with them. We don't generally send payments that can't be reverted to people that we don't trust and have no way of contacting. So this is a simple way to do it that works with the software that's already out there, with standards that are already out there, both standards in the normal commercial space as well as standards in the blockchain space, with just a couple of tweaks for our particular use case. But it's just really well-defined standard stuff.
Nice. Okay. How much scrolling is there left on that page? Maybe we just finish that out. And then,
I already explained all of this. You can scroll through it if you want.
No, just really quick so that people can read it without having to click through a link if they're already watching this. All right. So what's the next dip then? This is the last one, right?
Yeah. XPUB send.
Okay.
So otherwise known as cash-like denominated send.
Okay.
There we go.
And this also does tie back into the first one that we went over, which was that significant digits, and how many significant digits to
last week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So the basic idea of XPUB send is that traditionally, oh man, these words have been so minced, but okay, old school. A single address was once upon a time called a wallet before we came up with the term HD wallet, which now we just drop the HD and we just call it wallet, right? But back in, 2010 or 11 or whatever, when they first came up with addresses, because before addresses, there was just like hex codes, and then they developed addresses and so on and so forth. But so that's the heritage that we inherited. And so when they came out with the HD wallets, they wanted to be backwards compatible with that. So they would use one address at a time from the HD wallet. The problem with this, especially in our community with Dash, is that if you send money to a single address, you are unmixing that money. This is a security vulnerability. You are leaking data, right? So when Ryan sends payment to me and Jojo and Will and I think you pay Ash and then Ash pays someone else, or I don't know exactly how, what your process is, but you do it in the most charitable way possible with the current software you have, which is that you send everybody's money in one transaction. So if somebody were to inspect that transaction, it's difficult to say which money is going to who just by looking at that transaction alone, because you've got multiple people in there. But you could tell by the amounts what address is receiving what, if you know the information about, the basic range of, well, this person's working this much at this, this person's working that much, this person's claiming these tasks, whatever.
Yeah, it's all recorded on a spreadsheet. We do that
true
intentionally, but most people don't want that information shared.
Yeah, and I don't want that information shared, but just the scenario, take away our specific use case for a second, that it's all public anyway. But just the scenario, you still glean information about that. So if instead we were to send the denominated amount, so let's take CoinJoin as an example, which it doesn't really work because it limitations in it, but let's just pretend for a second that you could resend a CoinJoin coin, which theoretically with a few changes you could without unmixing it. Well, then I'd see a bunch of tens and a bunch of ones and maybe a couple of hundreds, and that's what I'd see. And then from that, it would be very difficult to say, okay, which of these tens are going to which person? it'd be very difficult to aggregate it together. You know, not ultra difficult, not like the FBI couldn't figure it out kind of thing. But if you were to send to multiple addresses, you know, to each person's XPUB, you send denominated coins, and we'll use CoinJoin as an example, to multiple addresses, and you just send those coins, then it's difficult for somebody to reverse that. And if you do that all the time, we've got a term for that. What is it? What is it when you just send to denominated coins over and over and over again incessantly? Why am I? Oh, CoinJoin, right? So what if it's just part of the payment protocol? Rather than unmixing the coins so that when you send it to someone, somebody has to mix it for a day, what if you just don't unmix the coins in the first place? And that is what XPUB send.
In other words, every send is a CoinJoin or a transaction. Every send is a denominated transaction. Every send is a quote unquote CoinJoin transaction in a sense.
Yes. Yeah. And so tying this back to the first one from last week, the only way that we can reasonably do that is if we can kind of agree that fees are symbolic. They don't actually generate revenue. And if they did generate revenue, they'd be way too high. And then nobody would want to use Dash for cash because you'd be paying just as much as fees as you pay for, you know, PayPal or whatever, right? So we have to recognize that the fees are symbolic, and we want them to stay symbolic or disappear, because if they go up to the point of being useful, they just cost too much. And then also that we only want to bug the user with some number of decimal places, which again and again and again I'm coming to, it just can't be more than 3. And then if you have those other decimal places, you can use those for transaction fees. So I could have 10,000 Satoshis that are included in my Dash, and those 10,000 Satoshis could be subtracted from and redivvied every time I do a send, so they never carry any information about me because they're protocol level at this point. And that I can send a bunch of coins, and I'm not worried about like, oh, this transaction is going to cost 200 more sats. How am I going to eat today? You know, you're just using those fluff values that are left over from the legacy Big B era. That's not Dash. That's Big B. Satoshis are a Big B thing. They're not a Dash thing, you know? And, but anyway, so if we have an amount that we say, okay, this amount is the amount that the user cares about, that's spendable Dash, and then we say the rest of it's just used for paying fees and adding on to coins, then XPUB send, you know, that kind of goes part and parcel with this, because you could do XPUB send the way that we currently have it. You could implement this and it can work. You could say, I want to send whatever collection of coins I have that add up to about the amount that I want to send, and maybe I want to get change back and maybe I don't. And it would look really, really beautiful with XPUB send, but it would be great and really preserve the security of not leaking user information if we always used a denominated send for everything. We never unmixed things that had been denominated. We just left them denominated and let them continue to mix as they change hands, just like normal cash. And that's
if and when this was ever implemented, let's say to a large scale, so that you could kind of, if it were implemented on a large scale, basically what you'd see on block explorers is every series of inputs would be denominations of ones, tens, ones, twos, fives, tens, 20s, 50s, 100s, and so forth.
That's what I'm suggesting. We could do it with CoinJoin if we made the change I'm talking about, where the last 4 digits are reversed for stamps, which would require the previous dip that we put the CoinJoin on the HD path so that you can count how many times it's been mixed empirically rather than by a state that exists rather than by tracing back. But yes, we could do it with CoinJoin, or we could do it with what I laid out. I like what I laid out better because it's less than 2 coins per digit on average, whereas CoinJoin is 5 coins per digit on average, or maybe it's
the distinction that you're drawing is whether we have the 2s and the 5s subunits between CoinJoin and what you're. And I agree with you that I would prefer to see 1s, 2s, 5s. This is how most bill systems work in the world. I mean, the United States isn't totally compliant with this, but like if you go to Europe, then you see €1, €2, €5, 10, 20. And the United States has a lot of those, but not all of them. But I think that they're the correct balance of denominations where you have.
Well,
Anyway.
the way we come up with those numbers is from the lizard brain.
Yeah,
It's
the doubles and halves.
Yeah, it's from the fact that we have to determine, is this group larger than ours or smaller than ours? Are there many tigers or are there very few tigers? And so it is doubles, wholes, and halves is what it is, because 5 is half of the next order of magnitudes double. So when you look at an army and you're or a group or whatever, if you go back to our tribal brain from a million years ago, you're trying to quickly determine, is this much more or much less?
Mm-hmm.
We're not, our brains aren't optimized to be able to look at a group and say, yeah, that's about 127 people. It's like, is it 100 people or is it 1,000 people? Is it this order of magnitude or this order of magnitude, or is it in between? And that's why we do that with money too, is our brains are optimized for logarithmic scale of doubles, wholes, and halves.
I think we've covered the dips then, at least at a surface level, so that people can look deeper into this. But what I'm seeing from the big picture is you've come up with a
did my internet go out?
Concepts of wrap together the concepts of paying to users, making username connections, making private transactions within those users, and in a lot of ways, it's different alternatives to some of the tools that we already have and are already building, but in a much more simple, backwards compatible way. Would you summarize it like that as well?
Yeah, there are some things that are not, depending on your definition of backwards compatible, or some things that are not entirely backwards compatible. Yes, the idea is that progressive enhancement would be the term that I would use.
Okay.
Because if you want to make a big change to a system, you've got the waterfall approach and you've got the agile approach. The waterfall approach is you're going to design all aspects of the system, and before you prototype it, you're going to build the whole system all together as one unit. And then you're going to treat that as your prototype after potentially years of development.
Mm-hmm.
And the agile approach is you're going to say, well, dagnabbit, to get to where I want to be from here would take a long time. What can I use about the existing system, use or abuse about the existing system, that with a small change within next week or next month, I can get one aspect of what I want out of the bigger system.
Yeah.
And if you do that repeatedly, you can get to a point where all the aesthetics of the bigger system have been prototyped and implemented. And then you have two choices from there. You can say, okay, the little collection of hacky-doos that we've done actually resulted in something that's good enough that we can use it. Or you can say, well, this has been a great prototype. Now we know all the constraints of the system. Let's go ahead and build that bigger monolithic change, but it's not going to be a system shock when it comes down the pipe, because we can run these two systems in parallel, and they're both going to have the same aesthetic from the user perspective, and perhaps even the same aesthetic from the developer's perspective. But the one system, the bigger monolithic system, is going to be better because it's been optimized rather than a bunch of hacky-doos. But you already know what the constraints of the system are, how it works, and how people react to it. And so this is taking the agile approach, which agile is such an abused term, so I hesitate to use it because it doesn't. It means what is in the Agile Manifesto as Uncle Bob Martin and his coworkers, put out on the internet, not these books that are, 100 chapters thick with certifications, but just the idea that you're going to iterate on customer feedback and you're going to take small steps from where you are to get to where you want to be, rather than branching off into something completely new and different.
Gotcha. Okay. I just wanted to mention one thing real quick at the end here. We're coming to a close. But there is at least one more dip that we have discussed, you and I, AJ.
Yes.
We actually, I brought it up and we discussed it years ago.
Yes.
But it sounds like we're at the cusp of making that. And that's basically a dip to provide a specification of how you could say, as a Masternode owner, I want to and I can provide X, Y, and Z services to the network. Yes. And I want to opt into this, and potentially even set your own prices. And so instead of like basically what we have with evolution and platform is we have one big service that everybody's kind of doing, and it's a mandatory thing for at least the evolution nodes. And what we want to propose is something that's more modular and more granular, and say, but and also more scalable, and say, hey, I'm a Masternode owner and I want to provide X service, like maybe image resizing.
Yeah, that's a perfect example too.
And we charge Dash for that, and it's a very simple thing, and not the whole network doesn't need to run it, but maybe a quorum of 10 nodes or something like that randomly selected, and each node, all those 10 nodes run it, and if they come to the same conclusion, then you can say that service is that's legitimately done, or something like that. We haven't got into the details, but I think that's something that I want to talk about more in detail in a later episode on Incubator Weekly. Definitely not right now, but I just wanted to kind of introduce that as something that we have in the works.
Yeah, and that one is much higher complexity in terms of, we'd probably need to break that down into 3 or 4 dips. But the simplest aspect of it would be, we already have an RPC to get the list of masternodes. So let's add or modify the RPC so that we can have keywords, say image resizing. Let's say that we actually decided on that as the keyword, but we could query, give me masternode list, filter by image resizing. And then it would give me a list of masternodes that did image resizing. And the simplest approach would just be to say, okay, I'm going to pay 3 of you to do this task, and then I'll just compare that the result's the same. And I'll just pick 3 at random. I'll pay you to do the task. I'll check the results the same. And then, there we go.
Well, I look forward to hearing about that dip in a future episode, or it may be a PR at the time, AJ. And yeah, I my main takeaway from the presentation of today's dips is a sense of a strong like juxtaposition. Like on the one hand, hearing about these PRs, just almost like gives me cancer. But then on the other hand, when I envision actually what you're talking about as far as how the user would, and even to a sense the developer would have a changed experience with the implementation of one or more of these, there's a real empathy there for just like, what feels natural to the mind, what feels natural to just what we're used to. So I guess all told, I'm just excited and glad that you've taken the time to work them out and submit them, AJ.
This is going to be useful in Dash Incubator because now we have shared reference material to go off as we prototype more of this out in a way that a user can experience it, not just down at the library level where I've mostly been working.
Exactly. I was just going to say that I can imagine a lot of people probably don't really understand much of what we've been talking about because there's just a lot going on.
And it's highly technical.
Technical. But
most people don't know how the HD wallet works presently. So just to describe a modification to that is...
The nice thing is that we're going to be basically implementing these. Like the Incubator itself is going to implement these dips so that you can basically just experience what it is instead of having to process this and think about like should we do this? We're already doing this, and so when we're done with that, I think we'll circle back and say, okay, we implemented this dip from the Incubator, and now other wallets can consider it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. Well, that has been it for us today, and we look forward to seeing y'all next week.
All right.
Bye.